Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Avanti Women's webinar. I'm so delighted to be a guest speaker this evening. So I'm Stacey Ann Berry, author, speaker, and entrepreneur. So I'm really excited to talk to you tonight about ways we can give forward to make an impact. So I wanted to start with my background and what inspired me to get involved with communities. So this is a photo with me and my parents, and they were really instrumental in shaping my perception of the world. And as a young girl, I always remember them not forgetting where they came from. So they immigrated to Canada from the sunny islands of Jamaica. And especially during this time of the year, during the holiday times, our family home was filled with barrels where they would pack clothing and food to send to their friends and their relatives back home, or they would find a way to cover the cost of a young person who's couldn't afford to go to school. And my mom actually, she's now unfortunately passed away for the last 3 years. She passed away, but she spent the last 20 years of her life tutoring hundreds of students. And I got involved with tutoring these students, mentoring these students. I'm in touch with many of them today. And that really instilled the value of investing in the lives of others. I really got that from her and looking at the world beyond myself and seeing what are some of the needs in my own community. So giving back, investing in the lives of others, paying it forward is something that is a deep value of me. And over the years, I became more passionate about getting involved in various initiatives. So I'm going to highlight what are some of the things that I've been involved in. So, about 5 years ago, I co founded and led an awareness campaign on an infectious disease that got international attention. And through this campaign, we hosted free educational seminars and identified scientists, researchers, those working on the front lines to educate the community. But we also did some advocacy where, through a partnership with university, York University, students were able to sign a petition against a travel ban that the federal government put in place. And that was hindering a lot of researchers and scientists from coming to Canada to participate in educational seminars. And some of the individuals working on the front lines who needed to send aid and food back to West Africa, for example, and the travel ban was actually making that very difficult for them to do that. So these students were able to get 2,000 signatures on a petition through our campaign, and we worked very closely with an MP who later became a cabinet minister up until the last federal election. And she was able to present this petition in the House of Commons. So that's one way through advocacy I was able to get involved in something at a very grassroots level using my own time and resources to do so. I'm also involved with several community events, such as organizing free movie screenings for hundreds of youth, organizing charity galas for nonprofits that I am involved with, as well as volunteering my time to assemble hygiene kits for organizations that are essentially are rapid response type groups that provide a lot of these hygiene kits to countries that have been impacted by floods and some floods we've had recently. And so that's something for the last 4 years that I've been committed to donating my time, as well as nonprofits that build basic schools in the Caribbean, literally gutting these schools and building it from the ground up. And usually the schools are finished within like a week or two, which is really wonderful to see. And then, of course, raising funds for charities that do this type of work. So there's some takeaways that I hope everyone will get from tonight's webinar. So of course, the benefits of what I call the 4 pillars of community service, recognizing how you can make a difference, especially if you are in a position of power and influence, right? And then lastly, remembering to never walk through doors of opportunity alone. So you might be asking yourself, is there a framework for community service? And I would say yes. It's essentially my 4 pillars is what I use to be a framework for community service. And so these are pillars that I've developed over the years of giving back and getting involved in the community. And you can find a pillar that you think or pillars that you find would be most effective for the type of initiatives or causes that you want to get involved in. So take a moment and look at this photo here. And depending on our perspectives, we may all see something different. So for me, I see women who are resourceful, who are courageous, who are strong, and who are basically making the best out of what they have. But someone else may look at this photo and see something completely different. So the first pillar that I would like to highlight, and I'm going to move this over slightly, is knowledge, right? It's really important to take the time and just do some research on the cause. Whether you want to raise awareness about a health issue such as heart disease, diabetes, or cancer, it's really helpful for you to have some basic knowledge of the disease. You know, what are the stats saying about the disease? Who's more at risk? Are certain communities more at risk? Are women more at risk at men? So it helps you to have the ability to speak on an issue and then know who are the experts in the field so that you can collaborate and work with them, right? And also you can gain insight and better understanding on an issue that you choose to be involved with. So it's also important that you just equip yourself with the right information, right fact check. There's a lot of information, misinformation, especially with social media. We've always heard, you know, the term of fake news. So take the time to look at peer-reviewed journals, you know, academic research. What are the scholars saying about an issue? Just so that if you are going to speak on these issues you're involved with, you're presenting accurate and up-to-date information. It will allow you to advocate if you choose to do so, or just being a volunteer who's more informed. So community work is very fulfilling. And unfortunately, it can feel emotionally draining and exhausting, especially if you are directly impacted by an issue. And there are times when people get involved with an issue for the first time because it directly impacts them. They may have lost a loved one to a certain type of disease, so now they want to get involved in that, or they could have been impacted by something as tragic as gun violence, right? And that could have been the motivator. So, you know, it's important that you also know how much you can handle, what's your capacity, because when you're directly impacted, you know, it could really feel emotional. So, know when to lean in and rely on some of the experts so that there's a collaborative approach as you're getting involved on an issue. So the second pillar is dedication, right? So it's important to remain committed because this will help you to navigate obstacles. So there's a quote by Henry Ford that I want you to reflect on. And it essentially says, when everything seems to be going against you, remember the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. So you do have to realize you're going to face pushback, especially if you're trying to move the dial or the needle on a big issue. And so being dedicated is really essential. Your ability to kind of see a cause through to the end or through till a goal that you hope to achieve gets accomplished, because a lot of nonprofits, organizations, many of them are bootstrapped, right? And they're so busy doing the work and they could do with a lot of help. And sometimes people use social media to raise awareness. That's been very common nowadays. And you're going to experience trolls online. So, you know, knowing how to deal with them is really important, and not letting that cause you to shut down or say, you know what, I'm no longer going to speak about this issue because of the pushback. And so you've got to have that wavering and dedication. It will help you to amplify your cause. It will inspire others to join your cause as well. So I'm going to go through the third pillar, empathy. This is your ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and see the world from their perspective, right? It's very easy for us to go into a community or get involved with an issue based on our own preconceived notions and sometimes misguided judgments. So you want to really deal from a place of compassion, but also seeing the issue from those who are impacted's perspective, right? How do they see it, and what do they recommend that you can best do to help them? And so I found that to be very effective with several causes that I've got involved in, because at times we may feel we can solve these issues because we may feel we're smart enough or we have certain training. That's really not what it's about when you're serving community. It's really being able to put your ego aside, having a lot of humility, and just being willing to just do whatever it takes to get the job done from a very genuine and selfless place. Empathy can also spark ideas for practical solutions, and it helps us to see the bigger picture. So the last pillar is servant leadership. And there are several leadership styles, right, such as democratic leaders and transformational leaders. And with democratic leaders, they kind of come in with a collaborative approach, which is also effective. And transformational leaders, they seek to inspire and motivate others. But with servant leadership, I found it to be the most effective style when you're serving community because you're dealing with people, right? And it's not so much about our titles and our qualifications that will make us be that right person. Like it's just really having that heart or that interest and the passion to get involved. So there's a quote by Brian Tracy which says, "Become the kind of leader that people would follow voluntarily, even if you had no title or position." So it's not so much about our position. When you're serving community, it's not about, a hierarchy and no one is above any task. So it's just really the ability to roll your sleeves up and get the job done, doing things that may seem unpopular, doing what, feels in your gut to be the right thing for the bigger cause, having a high sense of, social awareness and consciousness when it comes to issues and injustices in the world. And there is a quote that really sums up what servant leadership means from Dr. Martin Luther King. "Everyone can be great because anybody can serve. You don't need to have a college degree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love." And for me, that really sums up the essence of servant leadership. So before we move forward, does anyone have a quick comment or question? And if not, I will just keep it moving. So I want to talk a little bit about the importance of giving forward. And giving forward is really essential. And actually, earlier today, I was on Twitter, and there, if you go on my Twitter feed, you'll see the actual article. I can't remember it right now, but the article essentially breaks down the distinction between those who make around 50,000 and those who make 100,000 or more, and it highlights that those who make 50,000 give a higher percentage of their impact of their income to charity. And some people with the chat online find that to be really surprising that those with less are actually giving more than those with more. So that's something I highly suggest that you read. So when we look around our world, right, there's a lot of inequalities, a lot of injustice, right? Not everyone is experiencing, unfortunately, the benefits of good health or have high economic status or can benefit from certain ethnic or social privileges or have access to basic necessities. There are people who are essentially looking for a handout, not necessarily a handout, right? They're just looking for doors to be open for them because there's a lot of barriers that people face. And for some people, hard work is not good enough, education is not good enough, non-Canadian work experience is not good enough, and there's a lot of conversation around the challenges that people face who have non-Canadian education. And so, we reflect on these problems, it can feel overwhelming, and we have to also ask ourselves, well, if we ignore it, what kind of world are we going to leave for future generations, right? And the more we give forward is the more we can address some of these barriers, whether it's environmental barriers, economic barriers, or social barriers. And many people want to get involved, but they don't know where to start or how to start. And there's a few ways that you can start. You can start with giving your time by being involved with a community board, even a government board. And so for me, giving back is more centered around, cutting that check, maybe joining a walkathon that raises awareness on something, like a one-time event. And that's great and it's needed, but you want to move the dial a little further with the idea of kind of planting a seed for something that will create a kind of change on a consistent basis. And there's so many ways we could do this. We could also share our expertise, our network, give access on certain things. And we can also, mentor a younger person, mentor one of our peers to help them get ahead so that they're equipped to make a better impact in the world. So it's really finding ways to move the dial and move the needle on different things, which is why it is so essential to give forward. And I now want to talk about the idea of bringing others through doors of opportunity. And it's very easy to kind of focus on our own individual goals and celebrate our own accomplishments. But, if you want to have a community focus and a community mindset, it's really important to think about, well, how can I bring someone else to the seat of the table that I've now been able to arrive at, or bring someone else to a door of opportunity that's benefiting me, but could also benefit other people. So, take the time to look around the decision turntables. Look at the top of the corporate boardrooms and the top of political systems, even around the world. How diverse is it? Does everyone look the same? Does anyone look like you or not look like you? Have you reached out to people who are left behind and asked them to share their experiences? How are you providing opportunities for others? How are you encouraging others, even encouraging those within your network to get involved with causes that you may be passionate about? Because this is how people will change, their mindset by kind of stepping outside of the box, stepping outside of what's normal and doing things that are almost outside their comfort zone. And also putting yourself in a position to be able to help others advance either a cause or even advance their career is something that we can do when we want to bring others through doors of opportunity. So feel free to, like I said, if you're thinking of a thought or you have a question, feel free to use the chat box. So there's so many benefits of giving forward, right? It's fulfilling, right? It's your ability to be able to use your innate skills and talents. You can also develop great leadership skills or skills in advocacy and community engagement. And it also gives you a sense of purpose because you're adding value by investing in the lives of others and making a meaningful contribution. You can give forward and empower the community in so many ways by teaching them how to be more civically engaged. You could speak up and you can also be an ally. And for me, it's so rewarding when I hear from students who I've mentored who said, "Hey, Stacey, I got into grad school," or I just need you to write another reference letter because I'm applying to med school or law school, or I got my first job or a promotion, or I started a business because of a story you shared about how you started your business, or I wrote a book, right? So always think about those people that you can motivate and inspire by even sharing your own stories of failures and triumphs, right? And being bold, being courageous, and being an ally is really essential ways that each of us can give forward. So just to wrap up, think about, giving forward for the purpose of just making a positive impact in somebody else's life, in the community, right? Give forward when it feels like the right thing to do, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Raise the bar, go against the status quo. This is how we can make an impact, and this is how we can leave a lasting legacy. So I want to thank the Avanti Women Network for inviting me to be a guest speaker this evening. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I really hope that you found something valuable and some takeaways. I'm looking forward to hopefully a couple questions. And if we're not able to get through all the questions, you can connect with me on social media. Here's all my contact details. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and I'd be happy to chat further. So all the best and happy holidays.